welcome to Life Interrupted, where we have real discussions about death and grief. I want to start with a couple of disclaimers. These discussions are about real losses, so please be aware that it may trigger some trauma you have had when losing someone or something. We are also not medical professionals, so please seek out medical help if you are in need of it. Today, I want to talk to you about the difference between grief and depression. Grief is defined as a deep sorrow, especially that which is caused by someone's death. Depression is defined as feelings of severe despondency and dejection. To kind of explain how these two are seen very differently, when researching these two subjects for the podcast, I Googled the definition of grief. The definition was the first thing that came up. It was clear that grief is defined as the pain from losing someone. When we hear about someone grieving, the first thing we think about is that someone lost someone. When I Googled the definition of depression, there were several websites that came up first about treatments for depression, signs of depression in adults, in teens, in children, the common factors, the risk factors, treatment, and where to call for help. Depression is a very complex diagnosis and comes in many different forms. It expresses itself in different ways and can hit anyone. I think sometimes we think some people are immune to mental health issues simply because of their status in life. I know we were all shocked when we heard that Robin Williams took his own life and we found out how he suffered from severe depression. Being one who suffers from bouts of depression, I am thankful that it, along with mental health, has been brought to the forefront of our awareness. But I believe grief is just as complex. Grief is not just about losing someone. It isn't just for widows, and it isn't just for adults. Grief can occur when we lose something. It can be suffered by friends, family members, co-workers, and even fans. It hits children, teens, adults, the elderly, and even our pets. When my husband passed away, his little doggie went into depression. She felt my sadness, and I believe I knew that she knew her master was gone. I was taking her for a walk one day after my husband passed, and she just lay down on the ground and refused to move. I had to pick her up and carry her home, and she didn't want to go for a walk for about a week after. So our pets feel grief just as we do. Let's take a look at grief and depression to get a clear understanding of both. Grief is caused by a specific loss, and it comes in waves. Our mood can be improved at times during our grief, so there is the capacity for positive emotions even when we're suffering the most from losing someone. Grief can cause impairment in activities that would normally uplift us or make us happy. And our self-esteem is preserved during grief. When we have thoughts about death, it is usually because we miss the one we lost and we want to be with them. There are also two types of grief in general. Normal grief, which lasts up to 12 months, comes with sadness, anxiety, apathy, and sometimes delusions of being with the deceased. There is also no long-term functional impairment. Pathologic grief usually lasts longer than 12 months, has the same sadness, anxiety, and apathy as normal grief, but when thinking of dying, the griever just wants to die. They don't want to die to be with the one they lost. They just want to die. There is also functional impairment with pathologic grief. Functional impairment is when emotional pain disrupts the ability to carry out normal daily activities, like struggle with sleep, missing work, school, or important activities. You withdraw from relationships or support systems, and the inability of finding meaning in activities that were once meaningful. These things come with normal grief, but when these things last longer than 12 months, that's when it can turn into pathologic grief. Depression, on the other hand, is not always linked to a specific event. There is a persistent low mood throughout the day nearly every day. There are few or no periods of relief or pleasure. There are self-critical thoughts or feelings of worthlessness. Thoughts of death involve hopelessness or suicidal ideation. One article I listened to from the University of Utah Health said that major depressive disorder can be diagnosed using SIG-E-CAPS. SIG-E-CAPS is an acronym for sleep disturbances, loss of interest, feelings of guilt or worthlessness, lack of energy, difficulty concentrating, a change in appetite, psychomotor agitation, which is movements that serve no purpose like pacing the room, wringing of the hands, tapping the toes, or rapid talking. And then the final S is for suicidal thoughts. Dysthymia is a chronic form of depression where a person has all the major depressive disorder symptoms for at least 2 years, 1 year in children or adolescents. The symptoms are less severe but last for much longer and can significantly impair quality of life. So there is quite a difference between grief and depression. Grief can even look like depression in its early stages. For long term, if pathologic grief persists, it can evolve into depression. There are risk factors involved in grief turning into depression. People with a history of depression or anxiety are at greater risk. Sudden and traumatic losses often lead to more intense grieving experiences. A lack of supportive relationships can exacerbate feelings of isolation during grief. And some people possess innate coping mechanisms that help them navigate grief more effectively than others. So, how can we navigate grief? First, knowing that grieving is a normal and natural response to the loss of someone and something. When we think of grieving, we think of losing a loved one, but grief can come from losing something. Losing your home to a house fire or flood, losing a favorite object that held great sentimental value, losing a vehicle in a car accident. I even experienced a small amount of grief when I lost my cell phone. When my husband and I went to Paris, France, I lost it in the cab and it was gone. We couldn't get it back. We had to leave for London the next day. And the first couple of days, I felt kind of lost. And then after a while, I just felt like I left a good friend behind. It was strange having those kinds of feelings and emotions over an inanimate object. But the reason we grieve is not the monetary value of the object, but the value we have placed on it. I've seen people go through grief over losing an object just as much as if they lost a loved one. Sometimes that kind of grief happens because they had a prior loss of a loved one that they didn't process or didn't have time to process, and the loss of the object opened or reopened the wound, making the loss of the inanimate object seem more intense than if they had processed the initial grief. Sometimes intense grief over losing an object is because that object holds an immense sentimental value because it belonged to someone we loved or was a gift from a dear friend. Second, I think of grief as an open wound of the soul. When we don't properly attend to a physical wound, it can become infected, it can fester and poison the rest of our body. It is the same with the wound of the soul. We need to help our soul to heal from the wound of loss. Third, there are things we can do to help our soul process the grief and heal our hearts. We can journal, whether it's writing in a physical book journal or using a Word doc, or like me, putting it up on social media posts about what you're going through, helps to get the negative emotions out and not stay locked inside of us. If you journal privately, it is a safe space to express all your thoughts and feelings without judgment from others. Another thing that we can do is, that sounds crazy, but we can dream. We dream anyways when we sleep, but if we're sleeping, we are dreaming and we are resting. Dreaming is a way for our minds to process the emotions of the events that are going on in our lives. Then there's meditation. This is best done under the supervision of a meditation therapist to help if any strong emotions are triggered. And then there's support. Having a strong support base helps keep us steady and strong. It also helps when the support base has people in it who have also experienced loss, so you have someone to talk to that can somewhat understand what you're going through. I say somewhat because not all two griefs are the same. We also have to remember that people are willing to be there for us for a short time. But when we grieve for a long time, which it's natural if we do, people tend to fall away. Grieve the way you need to grieve and forever, however long you need to. But just expect that people get back to their own lives and may not be there as much as they were when the loss first occurred. That is when the grief support is most important, or seeking out a grief therapist. I'm on my own grief journey, and I can tell you from my own experience that when my grief is triggered, it is very clear. I know why I'm crying or why I'm angry. But when my depression hits, it just feels like this dark cloud in my brain. And no matter how good things are in my life, I am still depressed. I really learned so much about the differences between grief and depression. It helped me to understand myself more, and I hope it will help others understand it too. So do your own research, check it out. There is a difference between grief and depression. They are similar, but there is, of course, we talked pathologic grief and normal grief, whatever normal grief is. And then, of course, we talked about major depressive disorder and then dysthymia. So I would recommend seeking medical help, because that is the best thing that can help with processing, whether it's your grief or your depression. And don't let the stigma, I'm so glad that mental health has become more aware of it, because back in my time growing up, I'm 58 years old. And back when I was growing up, you just pulled yourself up by your bootstraps and you just kept going and just be happy. And people just thought it was something we could control. I've always had bouts of depression. I didn't know what it was until I got sick. It was right before COVID hit, and I got sick. And I went into a major depression. I mean, I'm talking suicide level depression. And I called my daughter because I knew that she suffered from depression. And I asked her, I was like, is this what you go through? And she said, yes. All the time she goes through it. I said, what do you do? And she said, if she needs to, she stays in bed for a day. But she doesn't ever stay in bed longer than a day. She gets up and she keeps going, even if she doesn't want to. Because you really don't want to get to that point where you just, and that's what depression does. You just want to stay in bed, pull the covers over your head, and just block out the world. I remember I went to the doctor to talk to her about my depression, and I went to like the back corner of the waiting room, and these two women came and sat across from me and were just yapping and yapping. I put my jacket over my head, and I just wanted to scream at them to just shut up, because I did not want to be around anybody. I didn't want to be in the world at that time. So I'm thankful that I found out the reason why my body was having that depression episode. I have not had that kind again. I still have small bouts of depression. And then, of course, I'm still on my grief journey. Grief never ends. You will always have grief when you lose someone that you love. They will always be a part of you. You will always have episodes of grief. It just happens. You live your life, and sometimes those emotions are triggered, but we have to make sure that we are processing our grief. It's so important to process our grief. And again, I'm not a medical professional. I'm just telling you from my own experience what I did. And I knew my own mental health, and I knew with a history of depression that this grief could overwhelm me. So I made sure that I read the books and I talked to people and I had a good support system. And thankfully, my daughters were absolutely amazing during that time. But it's so important that we have that good support base, that we have people to talk to that can help us through that and to process it. Read your books, do your research, seek medical help, do whatever you need. We're going to have grief, we're going to suffer from it, but it doesn't need to consume us. It will at the beginning, because that's just what happens. Our souls have just been shredded, and we just feel like we don't want to live. I hope that this podcast helps you. I hope that it gives you something. I love the saying, I don't know who said it, that even a broken clock is right twice a day. So I hope that maybe you at least got one nugget of wisdom or information from this, or made you go and seek out some medical attention, help. But thank you so very much for joining me. I really appreciate it. I will drop links in the description of the books that helped me and some support groups, websites, so that you will have that information if you need it. Thank you so very much. And if you are on your own grief journey, please know that my prayers are with you, that my heart is with you. And if you need to talk, I'm here for that too, if you need to. All right. Thank you very much for joining me. And I hope you guys have a good day. All right. Thanks.